Alright, so today we are making another video about my little toaster here. Actually, my Classic Mini. Now, I've had this car for, I don't know, a year and a half now, and I thought I'd do a year and a half update and let you know what Classic Mini ownership has been like, whether or not you should do it, some of the pitfalls I have fallen into, and some of the life hacks, I think that's like the popular word online, that you can utilize in order to make the most out of Mini Cooper ownership. Now, why would you want one of these cars? Well, first of all, the Italian job, second of all, Mr. Bean, and third of all, it is just one of the greatest little cars ever made. Now, the Classic Mini, of course, is a British icon, and if you're watching in the UK, you're like, what of a mite? Who cares? And that was very Australian. But the point is, here in the US, these things are pretty unusual and they're actually pretty valuable and they're kind of a weird, wacky, and wonderful thing. So that's why I'm making this video, because they can be hard to find and get your hands on. Whereas like if you live in London, you're probably like, whatever, this is a boring video. But anyways, for those of you not in London, let's talk about why you would want a Classic Mini here in the United States. First of all, you don't see them that often. So they are kind of rare. People love when you drive by in a car the size of a shoebox, and they're brilliant to drive, super fun. Parts are fairly easy to get, and they can be relatively cost-effective to own if you're looking for your first affordable classic car. So that's why you should own one. Now, how do you own one? Well, they did sell them here in the US for a few years, but they are not common. The US market ones are very few and far between. Most of them that you see here in the States have been imported, as is this one. So the benefits of importing one, I mean, it's pretty much your only option. That is the benefit. If you want one of these, you pretty much have to import one or buy one that's already been imported. Now, here is one of my little life hacks. The best Classic Minis, in my opinion, the most affordable way to get into a good one of these is to get one that's come out of Japan. So they built these from 1959 all the way up to the model year 2000. Anything 25 years and older is fair game to be imported. So we're looking at what, 1996. And for some reason in Japan, they went Classic Mini crazy in the early 2000s. So it's kind of weird to like think about buying a British car that was sold in Japan and then getting it out of Japan, but it is actually a great way to do it because they have a really strict road requirement on the quality of like the rust and the suspension, and then that means that cars are typically very well taken care of in Japan, and then when they make their way over here, you can get them for pretty cheap because they don't come from the usual UK, Germany kind of thing, and then they're also pretty well taken care of. So this was a Japanese Mini. Now, buying a Japanese Mini like this, a decent one will probably cost you like $13,000 to $15,000, maybe up to $20,000, where if you bought an older one with like heritage and UK significance, you'd be in $35,000, $40,000, even $45,000. So you're looking at like half the price for a Japanese one, and it is literally the same car. It's right-hand drive like a British one. It's got the same engine. It's got the same design. They have air conditioning because the Japanese like to stay cool in the summer. But apart from that, just get one out of Japan. There's sites like the import guys that'll import you one of these, or a lot of them made their way over anyways, and then you can buy them. Now, this one was $5,000, which is a hell of a deal for a Classic Mini, but it was a basket case when I bought it. Another top tip is ideally you'd have any kind of mechanical skills to fix it yourself. I unfortunately don't, so in it about $10,000 just for the running and driving car, and then I put another, I don't know, $1,500 into suspension, another $1,000 into wheels and tires, another $1,000 into the interior, another $500 into the radio and getting the speakers sorted. So roughly $15,000 when it's all set and done for this car. Now, what you're looking at is a fuel-injected 1275, and this has been one of the joys of Classic Mini ownership. All Classic Minis use what they call an A-series engine. So if you get one from the 60s, it'll use an engine from the 1950s. If you get one from the 70s, it's got an engine from the 1950s. If you get one from the 90s, it's got an engine from the 1950s. It just doesn't matter. This is a fuel-injected engine, though. So by the 1990s, even Rover was like, all right, we gotta do something with this car. So they put fuel injection on it. And at altitude in Colorado, what an absolute peach. It's an electronic fuel injection, too, so it's not some crazy, scary mechanical injection unit. It's got a little computer. It's got a few sensors, and it just works. Now, some people will tell you that the carburetors are better because they're simpler and they're not as, you know, electronic-y, but this engine over the last year and a half has started the first time every try. Absolute peach of a little engine, love it. Now, in terms of speed, 70 horsepower, cars weighs 1,500 pounds, so it'll easily do like 75 miles an hour on the highway. Top speed probably, allegedly, somewhere around 90 or 100 miles an hour. But yes, it will do cruising speeds on American roadways. Although, to be brutally honest, not too much of a highway cruiser because it's just so small, and when you're passing like 18-wheelers, not a great feeling. Now, if we open up the door, we can really see the interior of these cars. Depending on, where you get yours from, they will be right or left-hand drive. It's been one of the biggest surprises, though. Even living in the States, the right-hand drive has not mattered at all. Not at all. Like, the car is so small, it really doesn't matter where you sit in it, I find. As long as you're not going through too many, like, toll booths, the right-hand drive is fine. Plus, you can go through drive-thrus backwards, which is kind of fun. So that is one of the benefits of the right-hand drive. Now, the interiors are surprisingly roomy. I can do about 2 hours in this car before I'm pretty uncomfy. I am 6'1" when I stand up straight, like 5'11" when I stand normally. But in reality, like, headroom is surprisingly decent. My hair just barely scratches the sunroof, but I can sit up straight and be fairly comfortable in these cars. They will seat 4, but not with any kind of comfort or confidence. So really a 2-seater for most of Americans here, although the back seat is great for dogs and stuff. Now, in terms of like daily driver practicality, yes, you could daily drive a classic Mini. I know people that do. If you live in like a salty, wintry environment like Colorado, obviously the car won Monte Carlo like 3 times, and you put snow tires on it, and yes, it will go in the snow. But it's such a small car with limited safety resources, and now we just hate to get like smushed by someone texting and driving. So probably wouldn't recommend driving one of these year-round in Colorado in the winter snow belt. But they do have a trunk, albeit very small and very, very minimal. It is there. It is usable for toolkits, which I've never used. It's got a little spare tire. And yeah, you can fit, a small amount of stuff in there, like if you want to take it grocery shopping. But from like a classic standpoint, that's super easily usable. The car started every time over the last year and a half, about 3,000 miles I've put on it, which is not a ton, but for a classic car, pretty decent. And then they're just so much fun to drive. I think I've said this to death, so what I'm going to do is shut up. I want Case to drive it. I want to get his impression, and maybe he'll tell you differently, but I think they're super fun to drive. Let's go for a spin.
I drove this very briefly before you actually did much work to it.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, and it was not great. This is also the only right-hand drive car I've ever driven.
Yeah, well, I'm curious to see what you'll think about it. I mean, the weirdest thing is like the shifting with your left hand, but once you kind of get used to that, shout out to this new song called Chapstick by Coin, by the way. Absolute minter of a song.
So I'm assuming that you still have to go very slow over this dip.
Yes, it's quite a low car. You're right.
It's weird. It's like I'm driving a boat. Not because it leans, but because I'm on the right side.
I mean, it goes. It's not fast, but...
It's not fast, but yeah, it gets itself along. I'm not like in pain here.
Oh, that was reverse. It's there.
Oh, okay. Jeez.
Yeah, first and third are the two weirdest ones.
It's also definitely a little loud in this car.
Yeah, it is not a quiet automobile.
If you took a date for driving this, it would ideally be a date that you didn't really want to talk to.
Or a date that you're not going on any kind of fast roads, because yeah, once you are on the highway spinning like 3,000 RPM, you're not hearing anything from anybody.
It's a little loud, but it's a lot of fun to drive. I noticed that there is like no vagueness on center, a little bit of turn to the wheel, and it starts moving one direction or the other, which is something to get used to as compared to, say, my truck.
Yeah, your truck's gonna be pretty different. Yeah, compared to modern steering, it's super direct, and there is a ton of road feel. There you go.
Yeah, figuring out that shift pattern.
Yeah, you get it pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's fun to drive, and like you said, it doesn't ride super hard.
No, and
bouncy, but
it's a little bouncy. Yeah, and like so, one of the big pitfalls with a lot of these is like a lot of them have been wide-bodied and have been really modified. This one does have like aftermarket flares on it. I'd prefer to have it on stock, but like when you drive, even if it's a little weird. I mean, if you have a lot of money, you can buy like a very special one from the UK. Otherwise, just get, you know, the best one you can afford and enjoy it. Find a good mechanic. They're pretty much everywhere. For British cars, every state has a couple of them. Or fix it yourself if you're really inclined, and then just get prepared to wait a long time for parts. Classic Mini ownership in a nutshell. Big smile on your face and everybody else's. We'll see you guys next time.